Gum lesson 12 is commas, part 4. So really quick, we're going to go through these. We've talked about a lot of this stuff before, but the big thing you need to know is that this week we're going to be talking about series. Series kind of overlaps with prepositional phrases and appositive phrases, so you kind of see a couple of those things come out. You'll hear us this week talk about, or hear me this week talk about prepositions and what role that plays with commas in a series. So here we go. It's time for commas in a series. So the rules as they stand right now. If you have 3 or more things in a list, that makes it a series. And in that case, we need to add a comma after each item in the series, with the exception of the last one. One of the things that we want to make sure we talk about is the Oxford comma. And the reason we talk about the Oxford comma is because some teachers say that you don't need that extra comma in there. However, in the example that's shown below, you can see that if you don't include a comma, it makes it sound like Obama and Castro had a very short romance, and then they set their marriage date all in the same day. This is actually a real push notification that you would get like on a news app. This was actually sent out to somebody. So like I said, when we don't use it, it can create confusion. Somebody might look at that and go, holy cow, what's going on here? The other thing to be careful of is that sometimes we'll see nouns that also kind of go with prepositions. And so the thing to keep in mind here is that they're not 2 separate items, even though we have 2 separate nouns. So that preposition actually ties those 2 things together. So coffee with whipped cream, if you were to order that at a restaurant, they're going to give you coffee and the whipped cream on top. They're not going to give you those 2 things separately. So one way to think about this is that there is kind of the easy way and there's the hard, like easy series, and then there's hard series. The easy series is pretty straightforward. If we say John wants a job, some friends, and an easy life, like those are all really short, and we can look at what those 3 things are and easily punctuate. One of the big things that comes into play with a series is when we talk about parallelism. So you'll notice in the first example there, the words that are underlined, that those words are all called determiners. They're a type of adjective and it indicates each of those objects. We could say that John wants a job, wants some friends, and wants an easy life, and that's still parallelism, but if we're repeating the word, we might as well just stick it at the beginning of the sentence. In the second example, this does not use parallelism, and it sounds like a really weird sentence. If you say John wants a job to meet someone new and dislikes difficulty, I mean, that still kind of says the same thing, but you've got, in the first example there, you've got a determiner, and then to meet is an infinitive, and dislikes is a verb. So it's really kind of changing things up. So you want to make sure that you have the same part of speech at the beginning of the item in a series. It gets a little bit tougher when we start talking about phrases. So here you've got an actual verb phrase, so took a long, hard look at the problem, picked up his pencil, and solved it in a matter of minutes. When you see this, again, it's a little bit harder to figure out where that comma maybe goes, but again, if you look at the pattern, the parallelism, then you can see that we've got a verb took, another verb picked, and the final verb solved. Where things get really, really tricky is when you have lists within lists. So if you want to think of like food service, when you put an order in, you have 4 separate meals, and those 4 separate meals all have separate parts. So when you list those things out, when they get read back to you by the person that's kind of running the register, you know, they provide things as the list. So as you can see here, with bacon, lettuce, and tomato, that's kind of the list within the list. So what we do there is we use semicolons as kind of a strong comma to separate the orders. So tuna salad with chips, that's one order. Bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich, that's another order. And then the French toast with coffee and whipped cream, that's the final order. So when you have commas in a series like this and you don't include the punctuation, it looks really, really messy. So what we do, or what we try to say here, is the same thing we've been saying. Use the parallelism. Look for, in this case it happens to be like the main entree or the main food item, which is technically a noun. And when you find that, that's where you're going to start to insert your commas. When you start to look at the list within a list, hopefully those things kind of jump out at you and you're able to kind of put that together. So to kind of review, like I said, you want to ditch all of the old habits. sorry, you want to look for the old habits, you want to kind of look for the parallelism. That's probably the biggest thing. Beware of those prepositions, and then always, always, always use Oxford commas. And that is how you use commas in a series.